is Christopher Childers. I am doing my presentation over the unassigned territory, which is the fourth short story in the book We Are Taking Only What We Need. The first thing I wanted to do was introduce the characters. So the first character I wanted to introduce is Leslie Pawlowski. I am very bad with pronouncing last names. So Leslie is Stephanie's companion in this chapter. They are both missionaries who are going door to door and trying to get people to convert to their religion, as usual missionaries do. So, I also want to mention Leslie is a little bit older than Stephanie. Leslie is 26 and Stephanie is 16. And speaking of Stephanie, she is the next character I want to introduce. Stephanie is the main character slash narrator, so everything that goes on in the story is revolved around her point of view. Whatever happens in the story, we see it from Stephanie's point of view and through flashbacks in which Stephanie is a part of. The next character is Bobby Ratliff. He's not a major character in this. He's not even physically in the story, but he's mentioned in flashbacks, and I think it's kind of necessary to add him because of the influence he has over the main character and the influence that Leslie think is related to the main character. And our final character is Phyllis. Phyllis is she is the last character we meet in the chapter and kind of has the biggest influence on our main character, Stephanie. And I will explain more into that later in the presentation. So, the story opens with Stephanie and Leslie in the unassigned territories. Now, the unassigned territories is the land that the church has, that the missionaries go through, and it's not really assigned to anybody. Just different people rotate through that territory. But the territory itself is basically the boonies of the county. You know, that rural area where there's mostly like trailers and old farmland, and like how this picture shows, it's very backwoodsy feel. You know, like the old, like farmhouses and stuff like that. Okay, back to the opening of the story. The story opens with Stephanie and Leslie going through the unassigned territories and preaching to these people in order for them to join their religion, the Jehovah's Witness. Stephanie is like the navigator. She has written down all the addresses, or well, rather, she has made note of the addresses. It's not like she's specifically written them down like she was supposed to, but rather she kind of just wrote down a little information about the place. But she's navigating while Leslie is the one driving them to the places because they are too far to walk. That is the distance of the unassigned territory. So they pull up to this blue trailer, and right away, Stephanie gets this vibe that it's not a good place. And that's where she explains the rules of the unassigned territory. The rules are like, this is as remote as you can get. Most of the people out here are white Southerners who have been held up here for generations. Everybody there has a dog, and it's like an ugly mutt that is just there. The people reminisce about the last visit they have, even if it was a year ago. They will remember it and bring up saying like, oh, you guys were here just last week preaching to me. And the last rule, which I think is the most important, is there is nothing good about the unassigned territory. So the two girls start talking with the lady. Leslie is the one who takes the initiative and just really tries to get her to convert, while Stephanie is the one who kind of hangs behind and kind of watches. So Leslie talks to the woman, but the lady does ask Stephanie a question, and Stephanie feels threatened by this lady, uh, but still doesn't cause a scene and just answers the question. But as she answers the question, Leslie kind of backs it up, and at this point, Stephanie is thinking to herself, "This is why Leslie is the pro at this. This is why she's so much better than me at this." After this, they go back to their car and go towards the next place. So, as they are going to this next place, Leslie says, uh, "This should be our last house, or two more, depending on how far the distance is." And at this point, it's a hot day in North Carolina. Stephanie is just ready to go home. She says, thank God, thank you, Dr. King, thank you." And I just wanted to add that in there because it's like the only happy fact in this chapter. Okay, as they are driving there, it's basically just a flashback or the thoughts of Stephanie, and we get more insight into what Leslie looks like and how she interacts with people. Um, so she describes Leslie as this woman who would shop at a rejects or something that would just repel men because it's so hideous. She's talking baggy sweaters, long full skirts, and big prints. Basically just showing that Leslie doesn't really have a good wardrobe. And then we get a little insight into Leslie's love life and how basically she's given up men, except if you count Bruce Springsteen. And it's not like Leslie is really old or anything. She's only 24. But for Jehovah's Witnesses, it's kind of like the younger you get married, the better it is for you. And Stephanie kind of doesn't agree with that. We see this with how the congregation has basically picked her husband for you, and that would be Bobby Ratliff. That is her chosen husband by the congregation. Bobby is described as a nice looking white boy with a flounce of blonde hair, uh, unweaving hips, and clunky clodbuster shoes. And she doesn't hate Bobby or anything. There's nothing wrong with him personally. It's just she doesn't want to do that. She's not like the other kids of the congregation. So once she is done describing Bobby and her thoughts about the relationships of the congregation and everything, they reach their destination, and Leslie basically says, "You can take the lead for this one, and I'll just kind of stand back and watch you." And when they get out of the car and look at this place, Stephanie kind of falls in love with it. It doesn't apply the rules that I previously mentioned, like the house is small but really taken care of. Uh, the driveway is fairly new. There isn't this yapping or barking dog at them or anything like that. It just kind of disregards all the rules. And as they walk up to the house, that's where they meet the last character, Phyllis. So Stephanie meets Phyllis, and she's not doing a great job presenting the church to her. It's like her trying, grasping at straws, trying to do what Leslie did, but not really taking it, you know? Like she says, we are sharing a word from the Bible with our neighbors this morning, even though they're in the boonies and nowhere near neighbors. But Phyllis is being nice to them and she offers them drinks. And Stephanie believes that this lady wouldn't discriminate against her like so many others have done. So Stephanie and Phyllis start talking, and Phyllis reveals that she knew a couple of Jehovah Witnesses before. She says they were nice people. She admired the work they did, Stephanie and Leslie, the work they have been doing. And then she says that she has studied a number of faiths, and this kind of inspires Stephanie. Uh, Phyllis tells Stephanie and Leslie that she's not much for organized religion, but she does try to keep an open mind. And again, Phyllis offers her drinks, which Stephanie says no, but they do get to introduce each other. And Phyllis gives her a donation for the work that they've been doing. And at that point, Leslie says thank you, and then they leave. The rest of the story is just Stephanie's thoughts about Phyllis and how her open mindedness and kindness to her kind of shapes her thoughts. She kind of falls in love with Phyllis in the sense of determining her own destiny and stuff like that, and how it's so opposite of what the church is, and how even with relationships, it's kind of already planned out for you, like the relationship with Bobby. And yeah, that's how the chapter ends.